Hi, I'm Dave Reardon, sports columnist with the Star Advertiser, flanked by Stephen Tsai, our UH football beat writer, and Ferd Lewis, also a sports columnist with the paper, and we'll be out at the game tomorrow night covering the UH football home season opener. And the Rainbow Warriors are 1-0 after a successful 5,000-mile road trip to UMass, and now we'll see how much they can improve from week 1 to week 2. Speaking of week 1 to week 2, Ferd, normally the old cliche is that that's when teams improve the most. From what you've seen so far, do you think this team will take a big step in getting better in some key areas?
Hope so, but it might be a little bit hard to tell against an FCS team, although you'd like to see them knock off the penalty yardage that they had. That's one area where they can really improve over the last game, the last season, the last couple of seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it was a kind of an interesting game because they did make a lot of mistakes that could have cost them the game, but when it came down to crunch time, they came up with the big plays. Stephen, you know, speaking of that component of playing a team from lower division, how does this team avoid complacency? And from you've seen it practice, do they look like they're on the right track to put on a good show for the home crowd on Saturday?
Well, I think Nick Rolovich said you avoid complacency by remembering that his career was almost derailed when he played Portland State in his UH debut, and he got booed off the field, and Hawaii lost that game. So I think that kind of reminds you that it's a lot of talent at all levels of football. They might not have as big as roster, but they do have a lot of talented players, and the staff is mostly composed of guys who are at the Appalachian State team, and that's the one that recorded the biggest upset probably in recent memory of when Appalachian State beat Michigan in 2007. It was 10 years ago this week.
Let's talk about Drew Brown, the quarterback, his passing, and he's a very likable guy. He's kind of low-key, but you can tell he really cares about what he's doing out there. Even though he had a really good game, I thought, and took pretty good care of the ball, one ill-advised pass that went for an interception. But as far as his passing goes, is he babying the ball too much, or is he focusing more in practice on just throwing the ball rather than trying to place it?
I think there's some instances where he did, probably two, where he did underthrow the ball. I think one was to Amon Barker that got picked off, and the other one was when he underthrew Isaiah Bernard. But there was one of the throws that looked like he had gotten it short to Armstrong Brown, but it was actually put in the perfect window. And so I think a lot of times when you kind of look at how he's throwing and what he's seeing, I think he made some of the better throws, and I think there were about 3 drops in that game. So he had a fairly good game, though. It did look like there were some problems, but not in the overall game.
For a first game, though, it looked pretty good. It wasn't as ragged as you might have thought, especially with some new people.
And the fumble he had, that was just more of an exchange problem. It wasn't like the past. I think last year he had a problem where he fumbled like in 4 straight games, but that was off of hits. This is just more of a mesh trading off problem, and I think that's something that's probably avoidable. But that was also, just more of an accident as opposed to actually a mental mistake.
And the most important thing, he fell on it instead of trying to pick it up and run with it, because that led to problems last year. Ferd, what kind of crowd do you expect for this game?
I'm looking at probably around 22 to 25. Stadium people are hoping for 25 to 28, but that's tickets distributed and stuff, and how many people actually show up and battle the construction and fight for the parking spots is something else.
I think there's some factors involved here too, where even by FCS standards, this program that Hawaii is playing against is not a known commodity at all. I don't think there are any Hawaii players on this team. It's not what you would call a marquee opponent, and as we know in this market, the fan base really does respond to marquee opponents. And hopefully someday we'll get to the point where they go just because it's Hawaii playing their home team. But so it used to be where when we're talking about a big crowd, we're talking 40,000, and now we're talking 30,000, and a lot of that probably has to do with pay-per-view, right?
Pay-per-view, the shrinking parking spaces out of Aloha Stadium, traffic, all those kind of things. I mean, back in the 80s, there you could get 46,000 for Abilene Christian. People turn on the lights and people come out, but these days it's a little tougher. But as you win, I think that we've seen that the crowds have been going up slightly, but they've been going up. And 2 years ago, you're getting 14,000 a game, and if they can put together a winning streak and and be representative, I think it'll go up.
I don't think it's just pay-per-view, and I think it's people have changed the way they view games. I think you get young people don't want to sit through 3.5-hour games. Sometimes I don't want to sit through a 3.5-hour game. It's hard to watch, and they get their games in so many different ways. And the way ESPN and some of the MTV cut-ups are, you get portions of game, and that's enough for a lot of people.
Well, if you go to the stadium, also there's really no Wi-Fi there too, so you're kind of limited in what you can do once you get there.
How about the schedule this year? This is one of the better schedules they've had as far as not having to play back-to-back road games. They've got what probably is the hardest part out of the way, unless there's a blizzard at Utah State in November. But that long trip, got that out of the way, got a win. I wouldn't say it's clear sailing. You can never really predict that, but considering this is the most geographically isolated college football program in the country, schedule shapes up as I use the word manageable.
Well, it's much more than the last couple of years, but now after this game, you have at UCLA, then you have an open week, and then you have at Wyoming. Those are going to be two pretty tough ball games. Then you come home, play Colorado State, and how you come out of those is pretty much going to set the tone.
I think Colorado State's a sleeper. They're a very good team, and I think they're going to be tough. And I think Colorado State's going to be favored coming in here. They did a really good job against Oregon State, and Hawaii hasn't proven yet it can match San Diego State yet. So I don't think it's maybe geographically it's an easier schedule. But I don't think it is a schedule in terms of toughness.
You got BYU lurking at the end there too, so you've got some tough ball games, but you also have a lot of toss-up games too.
Tell me if this is crazy. I think Diocemy St. Just is more likely to accumulate 272 yards than John Ursula would be this week, and maybe especially since the team that they're playing saw what happened last week, they may try to do some things to stop Ursula, and that may leave some other openings, including for the UH running back who didn't break anything away. Didn't break out last week with a long run, but did some really tough work up between the tackles.
I don't think anyone's going to get 270 yards.
Yeah, I'm just saying more likely than
I think
the
they're going to
receiver.
distribute the offense more because I think it was the way that they were playing Ursula, and he got the chunk of his yards on two big plays. So I think they're going to see more of a distribution of the offense. I think you're going to see Dylan Collie play a little bit more this week. Marcus Armstrong Brown's going to play a little more this week, and I think they're going to find ways to get Freddie Holly and maybe Elijah Dale into the mix because last week they just couldn't do it situationally.
This is the perfect week to do it, assuming that you get ahead on this FCS team and get some other guys in there and save Diocemy for Wyoming and what comes next.
And then that's assuming that they take care of those penalties and once again win the turnover battle, and don't be sloppy.
Well, I don't think they should punch anyone, obviously, but I think I like the aggressiveness, especially when you have tackles that aren't very big, and I think you have to play aggressive. They're kind of mirroring the style of their offensive line coach, and he's a very physical kind of a guy, and I like the physical part of the offensive line play. Just got to be a little bit smarter, and if you're getting beat on a play, of course you're going to try to do other things to stop it, but perhaps maybe holding is a lot better than getting to getting to the face mask, which is a 15-yard penalty. So I mean, you've got to be a little bit smarter in how you're protecting Drew Brown.
Right, offensive linemen are traditionally some of the smartest players on the team, and with intelligence, you hope discipline comes into play. And the popular word now is trolling. I think a lot of defensive linemen like to try to troll offensive linemen into making penalties, and defensive linemen have a lot of more freedom than offensive linemen do in the things they can do with their hands and that type of thing. And that can get frustrating for young offensive linemen. But when you have some experience and then you've seen the mistakes you've made and you know that you got away with a victory, even though you made those mistakes, that can be a wake-up call. And hopefully it is for this team.